Hi, I'm Ron, and this is Solutions TV. Thanks for joining us today. Last week, we were talking about forgiveness, and this week, we're going to kind of stay on that same vein, but this one's called Prospering in His Presence. I'm going to tell the story of Joseph, and Joseph's interesting. Out of the 50 chapters in the book of Genesis, 14 of them are dedicated to this one story, and it's an amazing story. Joseph was born into a family that kind of put the dis in dysfunction. Jacob, you had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob was also known as Israel. And he ended up having, 12 boys and a girl. And the problem was he had 2 wives and 2 handmaids, and he had children by all of them. And so things weren't exactly as functional in the old house as one might imagine. And then the love of his life, Rachel, when she finally has a child, she has Joseph. And Jacob just dotes on this kid. He just loves this kid more than he loves any of the rest of them. And it's obvious. And he gets him a coat of many colors. And Jacob was just favored. And the problem with that is his brothers hated him. Maybe they just feared losing part of their inheritance. But to make matters worse, Joseph dreams this dream. And in this dream, he dreams basically that his brothers, or the interpretation to this dream, that his brothers come and bow down to him. And to make matters even worse, he tells them that he's had this dream, and they just hated him even more than the fact that their dad had given him, some kind of special coat, even more than the fact that it was obvious that their dad loved him more than the rest of them. But he added insult to injury when he tells his brothers, "Man, I had this dream, and you guys were all coming to bow down to me." And so the brothers decide, well, we're going to kill him. Now, their hatred had raged enough that they want to kill him. So they throw him into a pit, and then they get into an argument about whether to just kill him outright or make some money off this deal. So they decide to sell him into slavery to a slave trader. All the while, Joseph's sitting in this pit, listening to them argue about, no, let's kill him now. No, let's make some money off this deal. I mean, you can imagine what that's doing to Joseph's heart. I mean, these are his brothers. So they sell him into slavery. They kill an animal. They put blood all over the coat and go tell their father that he was killed and eaten by a lion or some ravenous beast they didn't know. All they tell Dad is, well, we can't bury anything because there wasn't anything left to bury, but we did get the coat. Now, here's what's happening. Joseph is still experiencing, he's still practicing the presence of God. He's still worshiping God. And he's sold by this slave trader to a guy named Potiphar, who was captain of the guard for Pharaoh. Joseph prospers so much as a slave that Potiphar sees everything that Joseph touched is blessed. That is pretty blessed when people can see the tangible things in your life, that because of your faith in God, everything you touch turns to gold, so to speak. And Potiphar puts him in charge of everything in his home. The Bible also said that Joseph was a good-looking guy. And Potiphar's wife wanted him, and she tries to seduce him. And he is constantly turning her down. But one day, she's in there's just Joseph and her in the home by themselves, and he runs away from her, and she grabs a hold of his coat and then accuses him of trying to rape her. So Joseph goes from prospering as a slave to being thrown into prison. And then he prospers so much in prison because of his attitude, because of everything that he does, because of this upright spirit that he has, that the guards put him in charge of the prison. he stays there until Pharaoh actually has a butler and a baker thrown into prison. And both of them have a dream. And Joseph says, well, God can interpret dreams. Let me ask him and I'll, tell you the dream. Tell me your dreams. So the butler tells him this dream. And Joseph says, well, the interpretation of this dream is you're going to be released in 3 days and stand before Pharaoh again. And when you're there, tell him that I'm in prison and that I was wrongly accused. The baker, he sees how amazing this is, and he says, man, interpret my dream now. And Joseph says, well, the interpretation of your dream is in 3 days you'll be dead. So in 3 days, the butler was released, but he forgot to tell Pharaoh. The baker was hanged on the 3rd day, but now Joseph spends 3 years in prison until Pharaoh has a dream. This kind of stuff, I mean, you're in this dysfunctional family, one thing leads to another, your brothers hate you so much they want to kill you, and then what happens? You're thrown into prison, but everything you touch, just turns to gold, and so finally Pharaoh has a dream, and he wants all the chief soothsayers and whatever, but nobody can interpret this dream. So then the butler remembers, oh man, when I was in prison, there was this guy in there that says he's a slave and he worships a different God, but he can interpret dreams. And so Pharaoh says, well, go get him. And Pharaoh tells Joseph the dream, and Joseph interprets this dream, and he says, look, you're going to have 7 good years and then 7 bad years. You need to prepare for the bad years. There's a famine coming after 7 incredible years of prosperity. Now, what happens next is Pharaoh ends up putting him in charge only to answer to himself. I mean, he puts him second in command over Egypt. I mean, it's just, you talk about, prospering because you're in the presence of God, because you're not holding a grudge because of some, it's just unbelievable. So, during the famine, Joseph's brothers come to him. They bow down to him because he's second in command of Egypt, asking to buy food during the famine years. Joseph had some issues with it. I mean, he still messed with his brothers a bit until he saw that they had had a change of heart. And then, when they recognized Joseph, and Joseph revealed himself, finally, after messing with them quite a bit, Joseph saw they had a heart change, and he had compassion on them. And this thing culminates on this one point. In Genesis 50, verse 18, it says, his brothers went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we'll be your slaves. And Joseph said unto them, don't fear. Am I in God's place? He was really saying, look, I have to forgive you. I'm not God. God's the only one that can really judge. And when we hold unforgiveness in our heart, really, we're standing in the place that only God can stand in. Only God can really judge our hearts. He's the one that only knows all the circumstances and all the intent. Sometimes people that offend you, they have no idea what they're doing. They had no idea why they did what they did. Sometimes even if you confront them. And so Joseph said, don't be afraid. Am I in God's place? He says, I know that you thought to do evil against me. Well, yeah, he knew it. I mean, they argued over whether or not to kill him or not. He said, but God meant it for good. It's because of what happened. I'm saving so many people today. I'm in second in command of Egypt. I'm not only have brought this nation prosperity, but I'm bringing other nations because we save so much food by obeying God and looking prudently into the future, that others are being helped too. You know, it's a big deal to hang on to unforgiveness. It keeps us from being able to prosper. It keeps us from being able to be a witness to others. If you got anything in your heart today against anyone, please find the mercy in your heart to let go of those judgments. Don't be in God's place. I want to thank you for joining us. God bless you. Thank our partners for making this available. We'll see you next week.